When it first came out in 2007, the movie Hot Rod was a failure. It totally bombed at the box office and was panned by critics. However, over 15 years later, the film has cemented itself as a cult classic and has die-hard fans ready to defend it with their lives, myself included. So how did this film end up with this legendary status? Let's explore the making of Hot Rod and how it became a beloved classic all these years later.
Oh shit!
The original script for Hot Rod was penned by Pam Brady, who is best known for her work writing for South Park. Although we now know Andy Samberg as the titular character of Rod, this original version of the film was intended for a different lead actor entirely. It was written with other SNL alumni, Will Ferrell, in mind. The early 2000s was a good time to be Will Ferrell, as he dominated the box office with hit after hit. But when the script for Hot Rod was making its rounds, it was long before Ferrell had even graced the big screen, as he was only known for Saturday Night Live. Studios worried he couldn't carry a film by himself, and the project didn't have a chance to really take off. So the script remained in limbo at Paramount Studios for several years. But in 2005, the Lonely Island crew made a splash at SNL, having several viral hits including the iconic Lazy Sunday. For those unaware, The Lonely Island is a comedy trio that includes Andy Samberg, Akiva Schaffer, and Jorma Taccone. They are the masterminds behind dozens of digital shorts they made for SNL that dominated YouTube in its early days. SNL executive producer, Lorne Michaels, saw the potential of The Lonely Island and convinced Paramount to give the reins of Hot Rod over to them, with the group both starring and directing the film. Paramount was initially hesitant for obvious reasons. As Lorne Michaels described in an article by New York Magazine, Akiva had never directed a film, let alone a feature, and Andy had never really been in a movie, let alone starred in one. But I thought this could be a different generation's comedy. I think this quote from Lorne Michaels really shows why he has the job he has, because he hit the nail on the head with Hot Rod. This movie was for a different generation, and was definitely a lot different from other comedies coming out at the time. It's an internet-driven comedy that we are familiar with today, but was out of the ordinary in the mid-2000s, with all the R-rated, raunchy, Judd Apatow comedies that were being pumped out. Once the Lonely Island crew got their hands on Hot Rod, they did a small rewrite so that it would better fit their voice and their style. The original script was tailored specifically for Will Ferrell, so they wanted to make sure to tweak it so it didn't seem like Samberg was just doing a Will Ferrell impression the whole time. Even though Will Ferrell didn't take the lead role, he still served as an executive producer of the film. The Lonely Island crew added a lot to the script, although Pam Brady is still credited as the only writer. In fact, they added some of the most memorable scenes into the film, including my favorite scene in the movie, the Footloose-inspired dance that turns into falling down a hill for nearly a minute straight. Jorma Taccone stated that their only regret while making the film was cutting out 2 extra shots of Rod falling down the hill. The movie was filmed in Vancouver over the summer break of 2006, between seasons of SNL. In addition to Andy and Jorma starring in the film, they filled out the rest of the cast with SNL co-stars and up-and-coming comedic actors. If you take a look at the cast list for this movie, it is absolutely stacked, and it features a lot of big names before they really blew up. The film had a longer post-production schedule than a lot of other films, because the Lonely Island crew was only able to edit on weeks they had off of SNL. The fact that they were able to edit an entire movie while still making their digital shorts every week shows how dedicated they were to this film, and how much heart they put into it. Since this was the Lonely Island's first foray into film, they utilized test audiences a lot while making Hot Rod, to see what worked and what didn't work. The Cool Beans segment in particular came about because the beat originally wasn't hitting with crowds they showed it to. That's when they decided to take it back into the editing room and turn it into a song. Now, it's one of the most memorable scenes in the entire film.
You look pretty.
What did you say?
I said you look shitty. Good night, Denise.
When Hot Rod first debuted, it was a pretty big failure. It received both lackluster reviews and lackluster box office numbers. At the box office, it grossed a total of $14 million worldwide against a $25 million budget. It didn't help that it was released the same weekend as The Bourne Ultimatum, and 2 weeks after Superbad, which the film shares a lot of the same potential audience with. Additionally, the film didn't have any real star power in it. Yes, there are iconic actors, but they play very minor roles. We also have people that we consider big names now, like Bill Hader and Danny McBride, but at the time, they were pretty unknown. So the lack of a big star in the lead role didn't help this movie's mass appeal and contributed to the poor box office. And upon its arrival, it was torn apart by critics, receiving pretty mixed reviews with most of them more negative. But once again, Lorne Michaels was right about the reception of this film. He had this to say about the reviews in an interview with Paper Magazine. Critics just don't like new comedians. And they certainly don't like them if they come from SNL or television. Later on, they revise their opinions and say that so-and-so's later films aren't as good as the first ones. I think the picture will be thought of differently in 2 years. Although it wasn't a hit when it first came out, Hot Rod slowly gained a cult following in the years after. Once it hit the DVD market and began showing on cable networks, more people discovered the movie. And this is really what the filmmakers were aiming for the entire time. In an interview with Inverse director Akiva Schaffer said this on the film's success. Our dream for the movie was that it would be on a Sunday afternoon with commercial breaks, and you'd have to watch it in that 4x3 pan and scan on your TV, where it just becomes a little part of your life. And I think for some people, especially after it got on Netflix, it became that. And that's what makes us happy about it now. They achieved this level of success, and I think it's because the film translated so well to the TV format. It's a movie that's rated PG-13, so there isn't much censorship needed to show it on cable. Additionally, it's 90 minutes long, so it doesn't take up too much time and can be shown many times throughout the day. This is something I also talked about in my video on Napoleon Dynamite. The film has such an enduring legacy due to the fact that the film is so accessible. In fact, when Hot Rod first came out, it got a lot of comparisons to Napoleon Dynamite, which is weird to think of nowadays since these two films are pretty different. But at the time, they were both paving the way for a different type of comedy, so they kinda got lumped together. Its audience grew even more when the internet became more commonplace and widespread in pop culture. Through clips being posted on YouTube and streaming services throwing the film on the front page, Hot Rod finally got exposed to the younger generation the comedy was more tailored towards. This is a movie that clicks with the younger generations more, like millennials and Gen Zers. I think the reviews on different platforms online reflect this idea. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a pretty bad 39%, but most of these reviews are derived from professional critics who work for various publications. And these critics tend to be on the older side. Just browse through the critic tab and you'll see mostly old people. But you compare this to the film's score on Letterboxd. The film has a pretty decent 3.5, with the majority of the reviews being 4 out of 5 stars. On average, Letterboxd users are younger people, as this is a platform that not many older folks use. But another thing we need to consider is that a lot of these reviews were added to the app years after the film was released. So by the time many people reviewed this film, it had already reached the cult classic status. This film took many years to find its audience, but once it did, it finally got the recognition it always deserved. It also helps the film's cult status that a lot of the actors went on to be big names in the industry after the film's release. After 2007, The Lonely Island pumped out all of the viral songs and sketches that they are remembered for, like I Just Had Sex, Jack Sparrow, and Like a Boss, plus countless others. Andy Samberg went on to star in the hit TV show Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Danny McBride, Will Arnett, Chris Parnell, they have all found success on TV and film, and the list just goes on and on. At the time of Hot Rod's release, all these actors weren't huge stars. But the years following the film's release, they all became big. That means more people went back and watched this movie, and the film got a bigger audience after the fact, adding to its legacy. It's very similar to Wet Hot American Summer in that regard, which is ironic since that film was such a big inspiration to The Lonely Island while making Hot Rod.
Babe! 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 Babe, wait! Babe, no! Babe, no! Babe, no! Babe!
So that's the story of Hot Rod. This is a film that was originally deemed a failure, having crashed at the box office and being destroyed by critics. But over time the film found its audience, and now it's regarded as a cult classic and helped usher in a new wave of comedy films. What are your thoughts on Hot Rod? Do you think it's a masterpiece, or is it just stupid nonsense? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Tom from Isenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. See you next week.